Okay, so what if I told you about a plant so tough, so full of nutrients, that we deliberately spread it all over a continent to fix our biggest environmental headaches? Now, what if I told you we ended up fearing that exact same plant for the very reasons we once loved it? Yeah, it's a wild story. Let's get into it.
We are talking about a shrub that can handle temperatures that would literally crack steel. I mean, it just shrugs off winters that would wipe out most of our normal fruit crops. This thing isn't just tough, it's an absolute master of survival.
And its toughness is matched by what's inside. A single one of its little berries has, on average, 7 times more vitamin C than a strawberry. Just think about that. That's a massive nutritional punch in one tiny little orange package. And here's the kicker, the part that's really amazing, it's totally self-sufficient. It has this cool partnership with bacteria in its roots that lets it pull nitrogen right out of the air. It basically makes its own fertilizer. So it doesn't just hang on in bad soil, it actually makes the soil better. So with all this going for it, it's super cold hardy, it's packed with nutrients, it enriches the soil. You'd think this would be one of the most beloved plants on Earth, right? And yet, in a lot of places, it's now seen as a problem, a threat, an invasive species. So, what gives? What happened?
All right, so to really get to the bottom of this paradox, we're going to look at its life story. We'll start with its introduction as a miracle shrub, then dive into its powerhouse nutrition, uncover the surprising problem it created, talk about the absolute nightmare of harvesting it, and finally see why this plant is now just kind of stuck in limbo.
Let's rewind the clock to the beginning of its journey in North America. See, this wasn't some accidental invasion. Sea buckthorn was brought here on purpose. It was cast as an environmental hero, the perfect solution for beat-up landscapes where pretty much nothing else would grow.
Now, this plant has a really long history over in Eurasia. In fact, its scientific name, hippophae, comes from ancient Greek for shiny horse, because it was said that horses fed its leaves will get these beautiful glossy coats. But its North American story, that really takes off in the mid-20th century, when conservation agencies started pushing it as the go-to fix for erosion and worn-out land.
And you can see why. It had the perfect survivor's toolkit. It can deal with insane cold, drought, and even salty soil along coastlines or highways. It didn't need fertilizer because it made its own. Basically, you could stick it on the worst possible land, think rocky hillsides, sandy dunes, and it wouldn't just survive, it would thrive. It was sold as the ultimate ecological problem solver. But its value wasn't just about healing the land. The real magic is what's packed inside those little orange berries. And this is where sea buckthorn goes from being an ecological workhorse to an absolute nutritional superstar. The numbers here are just wow. They're staggering. For every 100 grams, sea buckthorn berries can have around 400 milligrams of vitamin C. Now compare that to 59 for strawberries or just 14 for tomatoes. This isn't just a little bit better, it's in a completely different universe. And even after you process it into juice, it holds on to a ton of that value. And the story gets even more interesting because the berry isn't just one superfood. It's actually two, depending on which part you're talking about. The tiny seed and the fleshy pulp contain two totally different and equally valuable kinds of oil. Okay, so check this out. The oil from the tiny seed is almost perfectly balanced. It's got high levels of both omega-6 and omega-3 fatty acids in a nearly 1-to-1 ratio. For a berry, this is, well, it's exceptionally rare. Most fruits are just sugar, water, and some vitamins. Sea buckthorn is over here producing essential fatty acids. Now, let's look at the pulp, the fleshy part of the berry. The oil from here is dominated by something else entirely, a rare omega-7 fatty acid. You just don't find this in the plant world very often, maybe in some macadamia nuts, but sea buckthorn pumps it out in huge amounts. So this means one little berry gives you two distinct, super valuable functional foods. So let's recap. We've got a plant that heals the land and is jam-packed with rare, amazing nutrients. It should be on every farm in every store, right? Well, this is where our story takes a very sharp turn, because the very things that make sea buckthorn a hero are also, it turns out, its greatest flaws. There's actually a name for this kind of situation: institutional whiplash. The very same government agencies, the conservation departments that spent decades telling everyone to plant sea buckthorn, are now the ones putting out warnings. They're listing it as a plant of concern, telling people to be careful about planting it near natural areas. And right here, this lays out the whole paradox perfectly. Why did they plant it? Because it thrives in bad soil? Because it spreads through its roots to stop erosion? Because it forms these dense thickets that make great shelter for wildlife? And why do they fear it now? For the exact same reasons. In places like native prairies, its ability to form those dense thickets lets it just take over, shading out all the native plants. The plant didn't change at all. Our opinion of it did.
So that's the ecological problem. But there's a second, equally huge barrier that has kept sea buckthorn from becoming a household name: the economics. To put it simply, getting these amazing little berries off the bush is an absolute nightmare. Agricultural agencies have estimated that it takes about 600 hours of labor to harvest a single acre of sea buckthorn by hand. 600 hours. In an age where giant combines can harvest an acre of corn in just a few minutes, that number, it's just economically impossible for a mainstream crop.
And here's why it's so tough. The branches are covered in these long, nasty thorns. The berries themselves are soft, they damage really easily, and they're clustered super tight to the branches. So picking them by hand is slow and painful. People have tried other ways, like cutting off whole branches, freezing them solid, and then shaking the berries off, but that's still incredibly labor-intensive and it can be hard on the plant. So at the end of the day, sea buckthorn just doesn't play nice with our modern food system. Our system is built for things that are uniform, easy to harvest with machines, and simple. This plant needs tons of hand labor, it has separate male and female plants, which makes orchards tricky, and it's a real pain to prune. It's just too complicated, too wild, too unwilling to fit into the industrial mold. All of this leaves sea buckthorn in this really weird gray zone. It's too aggressive for some environmental folks, and it's way too difficult for big agriculture. It's a plant that our modern systems just don't know what to do with. So, is it a hero or is it a villain? Well, its status really depends entirely on who you ask and where you're standing. To big ag, it's a difficult niche crop at best. To a conservationist trying to protect a native prairie, it's a potential threat. But to the specialty food market, those oils are a super valuable ingredient. And to small farmers or foragers, it's a tough, resilient, and prized harvest that gives you food where other things just can't. You know, when you step back and look at the big picture, the story of sea buckthorn isn't really a story of failure. It's the story of a plant that just did its job too well. We brought it here to be tough and to spread, and that's exactly what it did. It succeeded way beyond the narrow little box we tried to put it in, and our system ended up calling that success a problem. This plant, thriving on a roadside where someone once planted it on purpose, really captures this idea. Resilience without permission still exists. And it leaves us with a pretty big question. Is a plant only a superfood when it fits neatly into our neat and tidy agricultural boxes? Or is there a whole different kind of value in the weed that succeeds entirely on its own terms, far beyond our control?